Kia ora, my name is Kitty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm sitting in my car and I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but we're here and honestly, I'm just going to let God guide me through this because I've tried making videos so many times and I'm a perfectionist and it needs to be a specific way. This is me. Welcome to my channel. This is a place where I'm going to talk about all things God, my walk in life and my thoughts on a whole bunch of things. I think that one of my limiting beliefs is that I'm a terrible communicator. I want to challenge that by making YouTube videos. So, what do we talk about? There's a builder. I swear every time I do a YouTube video or something, there's just a noise. Something is that's going to get to me. Lord, I pray that you stop that right now. I am from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I am Māori, Indian, Samoan, Pākehā. I have a twin sister. I'm 28 years old and I am an actress for screen and theatre, as well as I dabble in a whole bunch of other things. I love colour. I love anything to do with colour. Love the details, the juicy details of life. I love painting, music, dancing, movies, just the arts. We're just a bit crazy today. Anyway, born and raised in Auckland, one of the biggest cities in Aotearoa. My parents were never together. Every fortnight, my sister and I would go in between mum and dad's, and we'd stay at dad's for the weekend, then we'd go back and spend the rest of our time with our mum. It was a beautiful, I think, contrasting upbringing. We had the city life and then we had the beautiful coastal rural life. And so I really credit growing up on the west coast in a quiet little town to who I am as a person. I like to be where there's nature, where it's calm and it's relaxing. I feel really blessed that God gave me the parents that I've got, even though we didn't grow up in a loving home with two parents. I now look at it as that's unfortunate how it was like that, but it's the way that it was. Growing up between going to different homes, mum's house was there was a lot more freedom there, but in the sense where she wasn't grounded or mum didn't really heal from her own traumas. So us kids took on a lot, and we grew up with me and my twin sister and my two older brothers, and we have an older sister who we didn't grow up with. Mum gave us the freedom to be whoever we wanted, but we didn't have a consistent father figure in the house, and that made life difficult financially, emotionally, mentally. So it just felt like we were all existing and we were all going through the motions of life. And what I once was angry about growing up, I no longer feel upset, and I'm dealing with that through God. You know, there were a lot of words that were spoken, a lot of death that us kids heard, and I think that affected our confidence growing up. And then when you're growing up in a house where you're not financially stable, you're just getting by, the lacking poverty mindset for me was strong. We went to a school where we were around all these kids who quite well off, middle income families, and we were in a really fancy area for our schools. My family was the poorest in that school, and this is not just to like feed the narrative that we were the poor, sad kids, but we were. We didn't have a lot of stability. We didn't have guidance, and we were just put into school, and, like a lot of kids who don't come from much, school is a thing that is like a survival game. And I felt like school definitely for me and my siblings was survival, because we didn't have the involvement of both parents, and my brothers didn't grow up with their fathers in their lives. So, and with our dad, he was in our life, but he wasn't more so involved in our lives. It was when we would go to him and we would see him. And so the school life felt really lonely. It felt secluded. I developed a constant comparison to all these kids, and you just naturally do as a child. You're just like, well, they have that. How come I don't have that? Well, I have to somehow get that. I mustn't be worthy of it because I don't have it. And right up to this age of 28 years old, I feel like God is working on that void with me, because there have been so many times where in my current life I just compare, and it's just like second nature. God is showing me that no, that is their life. Your life is the life that I've given you, and it's going to be great. It already is great. Me and my sister, we grew up with our father, who was teachings at Sunday schools. Didn't have much, but we had the Holy Spirit, and that's all that mattered. Truly, I'm like, wow, it's God. When you have God living in you, he will shine through your life. Like, it's just inevitable. And the through line with me and my sister is we love laughing. Quickest way to God for me is just laughing. Like, that is the language of my soul, of my sister's soul. And when we laugh, we're just losing it. We're crying. It's just, praise the Lord that he gave us a sense of humor, because we have seen some things and we've been around some really dark, challenging times. But what's been consistent is our sense of humor. And I just think that when God was creating us, he was like, those two need to come in together. I'm going to raise them up out of the mud. They're going to be these beautiful lotuses, and a way that they're going to get through it is just through laughing and leaning on each other, and color and song and dance. There's just always been this joy as much as there's been depression and sadness. And so God's really had his hand on our lives, and me and my sister at this time in our lives, as we've returned back to our faith, we feel so much more stronger in who we are as women. And yeah, we suffer from childhood traumas that are still coming up, but we're taking it to God now, and we're saying, Lord, this is what I'm struggling with. And what feels so beautiful is that I'm going to say for the past 27 years, it was just, how do I get by? Survival mode. And now it is like, yeah, still surviving, but because I'm getting closer to God, I give my burdens to him, and I say, Lord, I can't even afford much. I can only afford gas and groceries, and I don't have any money to go anywhere. And I'm just giving that up to him. And then he's providing for me in the funniest of ways. And yeah, it may not be as much as I want it to be, but it's just enough. God is just always showing up in my life, and I definitely know that I need to practice looking at how he's showing up in my life more. Growing up without our father in the house and our brothers' fathers, there was a lot of broken communication with our mum. And this video is not to put our mum down, but it's just to paint the picture that we grew up in troubling times because we had a parent who was also herself dealing with her own trauma and not really getting to the source root of what was going on. It's confusing when you grow up with a parent who is they're the vessel in which you come through this life, and they're the ones that are putting you down. And no child should ever have to hear horrible words spoken to them, because it's like a plant. If you're going to feed it water, it's going to grow, but if you're not, it's going to dry out. Somehow those plants do still survive. You'll give them just a little bit of water, just a little bit. And I feel like, as challenging as school was, it was almost the thing that I think was bringing us out of the depression that we were surrounded by at home. For anyone watching who has come from a broken home and hasn't had the steady partnership of a mum and a dad, and that outflowing of love from those two, you haven't had that, welcome to the club. I'm sure that over the course of your life, you've really struggled with your self-worth. Am I even worth being in this life? I tell you, I have suffered with that, and even to this day I still struggle. But we'll get more into my faith story. When I found God, I found myself, and I wasn't so much looking, like a loose head on a neck. It was like, oh, I know who I am. I have a Father in heaven who loves me. And for those who aren't believers, I know this might sound crazy, like, what is she talking about? Yeah. Oh gosh, there's just so much I want to say about God. Yeah, so just going on through life, just getting by, and I hit high school, and I was always someone who was drawn to sports and drama. Loved sports and drama, and those were the things that really brought me to life and made me feel like I'm on purpose. And here's another thing, like when you're not supported in school, you just lack confidence. I was such an insecure girl, but because I had God from a young age, there was just this fight. It was just this constant, you can't do this, whispering in my ear. And then another part is like, no, I can. Yes, I can. So fear was just such a strong thing in me from such a young age. It's just so confusing when you're always fearful, right? Like, it takes so much of your time. You're just busy in your own world, and it consumes you. With the grace of God, I got by school, and I felt blessed growing up because we got to go to school with so many different cultures. It's like the schools I went to, I was literally going to school with the world. We had Ukrainians, Albanians, Samoans, Tongans, Māori, Chinese, all sorts of children were at our schools, and then that carried on into high school. So it's so important for me that I'm around a diverse bunch of people, and if I'm not, I'm just like, what's going on? That's God, is the diversity of the world. In high school, I found passion for screen and theatre. I loved watching movies, but I did not like the drama kids. I always felt they were quite over the top and they weren't my people, but I loved drama, but I didn't want to do any of the musicals. So I found my passion for drama in drama classes. Towards the end of high school, I decided I'm going to go and audition for drama school with the help of my drama teacher, Miss Sophia. She encouraged me, and it was just what I needed. She was such a beautiful teacher for me. She was the feminine, supportive, strong, motherly influence that I needed so much in my life. Looking back, there was just a real lack of love from a mother figure. It's sad because I think that children need a lot of love. They need a lot of love as well as discipline. But when they don't grow up in love, they get so doubtful of who they are. And I'm just being shown that as I reflect on the past 28 years is I would always think, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And then I look back and I go, Kitty, you didn't have the love that you needed as a child. Life wasn't spoken into you. Moments of life was spoken into you, but not nearly enough. And so I grew up so insecure, and I would look for validation in people, how I dressed, in my friends, constantly looking outside of myself to see who was looking at me to give me like a nice smile, and then for me to be like, okay, you're all right. And wow, this is why I was such a people pleaser, because it was just this nonstop back and forth cycle of, do you like me? Oh, okay, I feel liked by you, so I'm okay. We'll get to a really an important part that is the reason why I found God, and why that wound is the very thing that led me to him, and how it led me to almost taking my life. I'm an open book on this. I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and I guess it's why I'm making a YouTube channel, because I just have this real deep yearning to want to connect to people. And I get so frustrated when I just stay in my bubble, because I'm like, I have something, I've got to be getting out there and communicating and connecting. So I auditioned for this drama program, and it's a 3-year degree, and wow, those 3 years were so challenging for me, but also just what I needed. Drama school is not for everyone, but it is a funny way of coming into your adulthood from high school. So I went straight into it, and I learned about my voice, my posture, my body, people. We were all learning with each other, and it just felt like we were 26 students standing in front of each other, naked, vulnerable, raw, and we were all just witnessing each other's journeys of like, why you think that way, why is your head slanted forward, why are you so caved in. Just held the mirror up to you, and it really showed you what was going on. And I think that God led me to doing drama school because it was his way of unraveling what was going on in me. I was depressed through a lot of drama school, but I was also quite like, yes, this is the thing that I'm doing. Somehow I got through the rest of that class and those years. I met some beautiful people. What drama school did was show me just how much was going on in my life up until that point. My body was the biggest communicator for that. So I spoke with such a high-pitched voice, like a little mouse tipping on toes. I don't want to upset anyone. My head was slanted forward, and I was just like not really in my body. And what one of my movement teachers did was he like really pulled me back. He lifted my head and my neck, and then he told me to roll my shoulders back, and then he said, you walk down this room and you introduce yourself as Dr. Kitty. And I did that, and oh my gosh, it was so uncomfortable, but it was like I was being myself for the first time, uniquely confident, confidence embodied. Whereas before in life, I was just so used to being down, and even to this day, I'm just at times like that, but I can now have that internal reminder of roll your shoulders back, straighten your head. My voice was the biggest takeaway from drama school, and it showed that deep within me I was timid and I was afraid to be in my skin. My voice teacher, who was doing classes on how to release the natural voice, I tell you guys, when you learn what your natural voice is for you, it changes how you move in life. It changes how other people treat you. And, you know, even to this day, I can still at times speak like a little chipmunk, but I'm not as afraid to be bold. And that's just the biggest thing that I took away from drama school. So I started working in the industry. It was great because I was building my confidence through being in front of screen, and I was also learning how to communicate and to be strong and confident in my body while being paid and doing it on the spot. And it's the scariest thing. Acting is terrifying, and I wonder why I do it, but I think it's because God is just using acting as a form of pulling me out of my own patterns of comfort. You know, me wants to go like this, and he's like, no, roll your shoulders back and get on with it. Ended up building some really cool work over the years, and did some really awesome mahi with big brands. Before going into the industry, I met someone, and we were together for 5 years, and that relationship was the biggest. It was like so much more important to me than acting. And I look back at it now and I go, that was your first ever relationship, Kitty. You, and for him as well. And you both were so young and vulnerable, and you held on for dear life. You were so fearful. You thought this was the only person that you were to love for the rest of your life. You know, just really in this bubble of this guy, we got to get married. And I tell you, I was the one who pursued him. I chased him. Growing up with my mum, I think she was quite masculine, and it rubbed off on me. And there was definitely a wound of wanting to be loved. So I would seek that. And that was my posture towards that person at the time was, you're cute, you're mine. And somehow we ended up staying together for 5 years. I was so insecure in that relationship because, yeah, I just thought that was it. That's what you do. You find someone, and I was just so penciled in on him, thinking to myself, I want to be married one day. What does this mean for you and I? And before I had that conversation with him, I said, God, is this my husband? And, you know, you think after 5 years something's gonna happen, but it didn't. And basically the answer I got back from him was no. Broke my little heart. And I ended up moving down from Auckland to Taranaki to stay with my sister. And she was my only safe place. My twin sister is the person in this lifetime that I could go to, and she will just embrace me. She will take care of me. And so I thought, no brainer, I'm not going to stay in Auckland and be on my own. Never been on my own. How terrifying. It was so cool living down there. I learned who Kitty was without a guy, but at the same time was still wondering, where's my husband? Oh my gosh, who doesn't, right? Is it just me? Have I always wanted to be married? I think I've always wanted to find the one, and then realize that, oh, I do want to be married. I think that's what it was. Yeah, so I was learning who I was for the first time, coming out of drama school, coming out of relationship. It was just all happening quite quickly, you know, just life was going on. Living out of Auckland for the first time, out of a big city, was really nice. And the community down there is just so much more intimate. I started working at a suicide prevention retreat, and this prevention retreat was based in the heart of the city, and that was awesome. I met some really lovely people there. It was a beautiful, humbling environment because we saw people from all walks of life come into those doors, and it's just humbling, you know, when you really see what's going on out there. It was such a cute environment. Super cute. Forever grateful for that job, but I realized that I had had enough of it. And at the time I was going to the gym, I was drinking as well and smoking weed from time to time and just indulging. And I had my vibrator, and I know, too much information, but I wanted to paint that picture because that's how much I was in the world at the time. I was just living by my pleasures, and I wasn't going to church at the time. There's always been this like deep yearning to be with God and connect with him, but I wasn't doing anything about it until it got to a point where I was like, I'm going to just start reading the Bible. And so I started listening to this pastor, and something in me started getting really excited. And at the time, I was also running my own little thrifting business and making cooking videos and just doing all my creative things, but I wasn't really following who I think God was calling me to be, which was in relationship with him. You know, I just thought, oh yes, I know God, but we just get on with life and we do the things that we do. I'd done a commercial and I got a rollover for the commercial. And so I was sent a lump sum of money, and it was like, what do I do with this money? I've finished my job at the retreat. How can I go on from this place? I don't want to stay here another year. Actually, prior to even moving to Taranaki, I wanted to go and study my Te Reo Māori studies. Always a big dream of mine growing up is to know how to speak my native language. And so me and my sister, we sort of made this little promise with ourselves that we're going to learn together and we're going to do it. But when it got to that first end of the year of being in Taranaki, she wasn't wanting to do it. And so I thought, man, I was so heartbroken. But I had never imagined us doing the course without each other. Like we're learning it together so that we can pass it on for our generations. My sister was like, I just don't feel ready to do the course. And I thought to myself, man, what am I going to do now? And so when this money came through from the ad, I was like, okay, I'm going to go and move to Australia. You know, a lot of Kiwis go to Australia for a better life. And it was something I'd been thinking about for such a long time, especially with acting. I'm like, there's so much more going on in the world of acting in Australia than there is New Zealand. So that was also playing into my mind. My life's going to get better. The money's going to be better. It's all going to get so much more better from here. And then I just on a whim was like, I'm going to the Gold Coast, and I booked the ticket, and then I literally had a month to get ready for Australia. I started packing up my things. I sold my car, I sold my belongings, just everything. And come the day that, the few days before my flight, my sister drops me off at my dad's place. We go all the way up from Taranaki to the port. I remember when she dropped me off, I just felt so heartbroken. I was like, what, you're leaving me? And she's like, I gotta go. And I look back on that moment and I think to myself, that was the first time the umbilical cord was being cut, I guess. Like, you two are no longer going to be in the same country. The safety that you once had is, yeah, it's there, but it's something's different now. Like, you're going off and you're physically going to another place. So heartbroken. And when I was at the airport, I was stressed out, and I don't know if I should get into the details of Australia, but long story short, I lasted 2 weeks in Australia. Things were going really well, but I just kept thinking, this doesn't feel right. I'm scared. On top of being in a new country, of course, it's different. And I just became my own worst enemy in my head, and I was so stressed out, just crazily stressed out. I ended coming back, and the mentality that I had coming back, that was just the start of a big car crash. He ended up going back home to my dad's, and I was just so disappointed in myself. I spent my first ever Christmas with him, and I said, Dad, can you please pray over me? I'm feeling really stressed out. He prayed over me, and then I was just spending time in nature, so heartbroken and disappointed in myself that I hadn't lasted that long. The only next step from here is just to go back and be with my sister, and she was getting ready to cherry pick, but she hadn't just left yet. She invited me to come with her, but I needed to get a place first. I signed up, got an email saying, yep, you're all good to go. And then my dad took me all the way down to Taranaki, and at this time, my weight was fluctuating. I think I'd put on quite a bit of weight. For me, my biggest indicator that I'm stressed is my weight. Like, it goes up and down. And yeah, I look back at some of the pictures and I'm like, you were so stressed out. And food has always been my biggest love. And I was using it to just drain the feelings of I don't feel enough, and just fill me up. It was literally, is it gluttony? Is that the word? Or if you can imagine, like just a spirit of always being hungry and wanting to be fed. I was just doing that. And he dropped me off, and I thought, okay, great, I'm going to be with my sister. Everything's going to be okay. I feel safe now. And then we were getting ready to go to the South Island, and the whole trip down there was, I was just spiraling. I was going down and down and down in my mind. But the only person in the world that I felt safe with was my sister. We get to the cherry picking place, and it's lovely, but our campsite's a bomb site, and we meet some really interesting, funny people who just have hearts of gold but smoke a lot of weed. And I'm just having this mental breakdown in front of my sister. And she's there just to hold the space and love me and just tell me everything's okay. We're picking cherries at the early hours of the morning. I'm sleeping in a tent. My sister's sleeping in her car. And we're just working really hard. And it gets to this point one day where I'm sitting in an orchard, and I just, like, from going to Australia, being so stressed out, then quickly deciding I'm coming back home because I don't feel safe, to being with my dad, to then just living in that spiral of doubt, to then going with my sister. It all led up to a point where I was sitting in the orchard, and I just remember something changing. Didn't quite understand what was going on, but I started crying. Looking back, I was entering into a really dangerous mindset of depression is setting in. And I remember when that moment of just realizing it without even realizing it, I think my spirit was going, we're not safe, was I started saying out loud, my God, my all, my God, my all, my God, my all. And I just kept saying it, and I was crying and crying. And that was my first ever sort of moment of surrender and true sort of mantra to myself to keep me safe is, my Lord, my all, my Lord, my all. God, you are my all, you are my all. Protect me. My sister saw that I wasn't okay, and she was like, we need to get you back home. So we didn't have anywhere else to go. My sister had moved out of the place that she was staying in prior to us going to cherry picking. Her thing was move out and go cherry picking, and then after the season we'll come back and we'll go to mum's. She was going to do this all on her own, but because I was having a mental breakdown and I'd cut her journey short, but she wasn't even enjoying it there. She's like, this place is ridiculous. We're working like animals. The standards here are just not okay. Like, cherry picking's a great job, but you're there to make money. It's not a glamorous thing at all. And so people from all over the world come to those sites because you can make so much money if you know how to do it well. And so even just that, I was like, oh, people can make so much money. And that was my focus while I was having a mental breakdown. And I was like, well, I got to get faster at picking these cherries. And I wasn't getting faster, and I was getting so disappointed in that thing of comparing. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even do this right. And so it just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And then it got to that point where I was just completely like, I don't have faith in anything. And my sisters could see that, and she was like, we need to take you home. You're not okay. And so I just trusted her to lead me, because I couldn't think logically. I was just gone, like a dead piece of person. Dare I say it, but I was so dead in my body. And yet I was her passenger princess, and she was doing just doing the best she could. And then on top of me not being okay, I end up going back to my mum's place, and I have nowhere to stay. I'm living in a tent. I don't have a car. I've got some money in the bank account, don't have a job, and I'm just feeling like the ultimate failure. I'm living in a tent in my mum's backyard. And our relationship at the time with our mum was just not good for many reasons. And I stayed out of the house, and so did my sister. She stayed in her car because we just didn't want to talk with our mum. We were we were safe there, but we weren't safe there. I was applying for jobs, but I was also like not okay, and knowing that I wasn't comfortable or confident in my ability to apply for a job because I just mentally wasn't well. And then knowing that I wasn't well, and that making me angry that I can't go and do these things just yet because I'm not okay. It got to a point where my sister had just had enough, and she's like, we need to buy you a car, and you need to go back up to Auckland, and you need to try and get back into your acting. That is the plan. And because I couldn't think for myself, I was like, okay, I will listen to you. And so we bought myself a car, and just the journey of buying a car was so much. I was just so hot and cold with all these different people, because mentally I was just not in a place to make logical decisions. And when you're depressed, I don't know how some people can just get on with life, but something turned off. My brain was switching off. And so my sister was like, buy this car. I bought the car, and she's like, all right, go up. And I remember when I was going up, I just wasn't okay the whole time. And when it was like a 6-hour drive, prior to even getting to Auckland, I had picked up a hitchhiker, and he was really lovely, and he was just trying to get to his destination as quickly as he could, and I was just like, oh, whatever. Picked him up and we were chatting, and I just said to him, I was so honest, and I said, what do you do when you want to take your life? Yeah, that was the first time I sort of gotten that out of my body. He said, I've been there. Here's my number. You call me anytime you need, but don't do it. Don't do it, because you're going to leave a whole world behind, and you're going to break the hearts of your family members. And I ended up staying with the friend for a few weeks, and I was doing everything in my power to find a job, but my confidence, just in that really hazy, foggy mindset, the intention was there, but deep down I didn't want to get a job. I was applying for a few jobs and having interviews, and I just got to this point where I was just like, I feel like I'm in such a dangerous mind space, so I've just got to keep going, and I got to work my way out of this. So I started going to the gym. I was going to these little art classes. I was doing everything in my power to get out of this mind state, and I couldn't. I remember being at the gym looking around at all these people, and I was just like, I wish I could be you. I don't want to be me right now. It feels so dangerous to be in my body, in my mind. And the only comfort that gave me peace was knowing I'm going to sleep. I would go to sleep, and I was in this really beautiful, loving home with these people, my friends, but I just felt so unsafe in my body, in my mind. And yeah, the only thing that brought me comfort was going to sleep, knowing, oh, it's time to go to sleep. It just means it's a rest from all of this. But then when I woke up the next day, I was just like, okay, I don't know what to do. I said to my friend, I need help. She encouraged me to go to a psychiatrist at the hospital, and I just basically started talking to them about everything. But it felt so belittling. I'm not putting the blame on them, but when I was expressing what was going on inside of me, I was just like, yeah, it just sounds so stupid. And so they gave me medication, and then they referred me to a respite place. And I think this is the beginning of me entering the hole even deeper. I get to this respite place, and it's a beautiful place, but I'm so stressed. And I think why I was so stressed is because I just kept moving and moving and moving and going and aiming for things. And I was even getting prepared for a interview to be an air hostess. And at the time, I hadn't had enough sleep. And so my first night at the respite care place, I had the worst sleep I'd ever had. My room was beautiful. I was okay, but I didn't sleep well. And I remember the whole time in my brain, it was just like, we've got to figure out ways to get a job, and just non-stop chatter in my mind of, we've got to keep doing things. We've got to get out of this mindset. And because I didn't have a good sleep, I was in such a crazy mind space that I was just like, I've had enough. I quickly wrote a note on my phone for my sister to find, and I said, I'm sorry, I love you, but this is how tired I was. There was nowhere that I could injure myself except under the basin of, in the bathroom, there was just like this, what do you call it, the pipes? And they were connected to the wall, but there was a bit of a gap. So I put the cord around me, and I attempted. I just couldn't bring myself to doing it. And I remembered going downstairs and just saying, I tried to hang myself. And I was just straight up honest. And they were like, okay, Kitty, we thank you for telling us. They took the cord off me. And then I had two people from another team connected to the respite place come and say, what's going on? Can you talk to us about what you tried to do? But they were also there to deliver more, like some medication, antidepressants and sleep medication to me. I can't relax. I can't go to sleep. I don't know. I'm just beyond. I didn't know what to say, really. He said, you can't do that here. If you want to stay here, you can't unalive yourself here. And yeah, right? You don't go to a respite care to unalive yourself. You go there to heal and to rest. But me, I couldn't relax. My way of resting was just the idea of, I've got to die. I've got to go to sleep because something's not okay. You guys can't help me. Nothing's working. Started just spending the next few days working out. And I was just trying everything in my power to get out of that mind state. And I couldn't. And anyway, it got to the end of my time being there. I went back to my friend's place. And I guess I was in a better mind state for those people to be like, okay, she seems okay. And I wasn't. And I went back to my friend's place, and she was so welcoming to me. But I said, I'm going to go back and be with my sister, because that's where I feel safe. And I think my friend may have felt a bit disappointed that I was leaving so soon, but I didn't feel safe in my body, so I just knew that's what I need to do. So I began my journey of driving all the way back to Taranaki. It's a 6-hour journey. That whole 6-hour journey, I couldn't stop thinking about ways to crash the car. 6 hours of non-stop, should I crash here? Maybe if I drive off that cliff, I'll smash. It was just crazy thinking of complete mental torture while I was trying to safely get down to Taranaki. I was under a very dangerous attack. Every bend, every hill, every sharp downhill, I was just like, if I speed, it was just insanity, like true insanity. And I remember when I got to my sister's, she was just where I felt calm. And so I ended up staying with her. I was allowed to be with her while she was living in the flat with others. And I knew those ladies. I'd lived with them before when I lived in Taranaki. And so Jody took me in and she made me feel okay, but I just didn't feel all right. You know, it was just like I was dead inside. And anytime I knew that I could be alone was when I was so vulnerable to the attacks of take your life, take your life. But if my sister was around, it was just like I was safe, but I still wasn't safe, if that makes sense. There was this party that I was invited to. It was from my old workmates at the retreat, and it was by this beautiful beach. The spirit of death was following me, and it was saying, what you're going to do is accept going to the party. You're going to show up to the party for an hour and a bit, and then for the rest of the night you're going to find a way to end your life. And so my sister, knowing the mind state I was in, but also not fully knowing just how dark it had gotten in my head, she said, okay, I'll pick you up after the party. And I said, oh, there might be the possibility where I can stay the night, so you don't have to. You can pick me up in the morning. But in my head, I was just started making up these lies. And I said, yeah, just pick me up in the morning, but don't worry about me. You need to go and unalive yourself after you go to this party so your sister's not around. Because if she's around, you won't be able to do it. And it was crazy because the moments where I was alone were the moments where I felt this strange freedom of, I'm all alone and I'm isolated, so this is where I get to start planning my escape, my death. And I just had a lot of those moments. So when my sister was with me, I was safe and I was being looked after. But it got to a point where she had enough of being around me. She needed a break. So this was good. I was going to a party. It's like I was being normal, you know, and showing up and socializing. So I go to this party and I stay for a bit. I have a little bit of weed. I catch up with people, but I'm really quiet in my mind. And I'm not really talking with anyone. But I'm around people. I'm safe, right? And then I say, okay, guys, I'm going to go home. And I've texted my sister saying, yeah, don't worry, I'm staying the night. I go and walk to the beach. It's probably around 1 in the morning, and I'm walking in pitch black darkness, and I remember just looking at the sea going, okay, go and drown yourself. I go into the sea and I just scream under the water. I'm just so just angry. And I think that was me screaming to God and going, you're not doing anything about this. You're not helping me whatsoever. So I kept walking along the beach, and I was just like, hey, what are we going to do now? And I remember it was like no one was in the city. It was just so quiet. It was this place by the retreat that I used to work at, and it was a big car park. And I remember doing laps around it, and I was just like, I'm going to go up there, jump off, and smash my head. I just kept walking around it, and I couldn't fully bring myself to doing it. And so it was just like the idea was getting stronger and stronger, even though I wasn't fully committing to the action. I can't believe how much I walked that night. It was insane. I walked for hours. I ended up walking up to this other part of town and down this really low valley area into this dark reserve. On my way to the reserve, I would hear these trucks passing by on one of the main roads, and I was like, I'll jump in front of those trucks and I'll smash my head. Like, guys, I was just wow. Taranaki has so many amazing walking places. I walk through this reserve and it's pitch black. No one, you just don't go down this reserve. And I remember taking my shoes off and walking on the grass because I didn't want anyone to disturb what plans I had. I looked back to make sure no one's following me. And you know what's crazy is I wasn't scared that someone was going to take me and hurt me. My mind state was more scarier than someone else trying to take me. I just felt like a murderer in my head. And so anyone else trying to do that to me, I was like, well, you can't, because I'm doing it to myself. And that feels even scarier. It just really stuck with me that I was in such a dangerous mind state that I wasn't even doing anything about it, but I was in that state. It's like knowing that any person has the ability to take your life, but they won't. But they could. But you turn that on yourself. And it's all you think about. And it's non-stop while you're doing the day. I can't think of anything more hell-like to be your own worst enemy while you're just showing up in the world. It's scary. So I'm walking through this reserve, and I'm looking at the creek, the rushing water in the river. Quite low, and there's trees and stuff, and I'm like, I could climb up this tree and jump into the creek and smash my head on a rock and I'll be done. I can jump off this little bridge non-stop the whole night. And I walk through that reserve, and one of the most beautiful things about walking through that reserve was how pitch black it was. And I looked to my right and I saw all these glowworms on the side of under this rock, and you just kept walking and walking, and they were just glistening, and I was just like, wow, that is so beautiful. Well, I'm having these thoughts of let's smash my head here, and it was just a moment of far out, this is beautiful. I don't know if it was in the time of when I was walking in the reserve that I had this remembrance of the scripture, but it was, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. And I can't quite remember the fullness of that scripture, but that's what comes to mind when I was walking through the literal valley of death in my mind. Pitch black, glowworms on the side, me looking at that side going, I'm done. We're done with life. I keep walking, and I get to a point where we get to a main road, where it's like you come out of the park and there's this tall bridge in front of me. And so I go and walk up on it, and I'm like, I'll jump off this one. And I'm looking down at the ground from the bridge, and there's these trucks that are passing and going by, and I just think I've got to appear normal, or else they're going to think that I'm up to something, and we can't have anyone stop the plans. And so I just stay there for such a long time imagining me jumping off, and I don't do it. End up walking back home. It's like a 5-minute walk from that bridge, and I hop into bed, and my sister's so confused that I'm home, and she's like, how did you get home? And I'm like, oh, I got dropped off, or I made up some sort of lie. It was just like my sister could tell I wasn't being honest. And it was really sad to have gotten to that point in my mind where I was just lying to the people that I love, especially my sister. It got to a point where my sister was like, I need to have a break. So my sister goes out and enjoys her time, and I'm just stuck at home thinking of ways to end my life. It was all I could think about. And the whole time she's on her date, I'm just alone. But the other Jodie's in the house thinking that I'm doing okay. She looks normal, and I'm still planning and I'm scheming. When you are left with yourself, that's when it can get worse. And so I wasn't okay to be left alone at all. But it hadn't even gotten to the worst point. My sister came back home, and I waited for her to go to sleep so that I could get into my car and go and drive and crash my car. I hear my sister fall asleep. I get in the car, and I remember when I was driving out of the city, a big smile on my face came over me, and I was like, finally, you're alone. All right, let's do this. And I start speeding. I'd taken a whole bunch of sleeping pills and something else. I don't remember the trip. Next minute, I'm in a ditch. A couple have pulled me out, called the ambulance. I don't remember the ambulance trip back home. I just remember being awake in the hospital and a nurse coming up to me and saying, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Can I call my sister? I call her and I let her know that I'm in the hospital. I have a psychiatrist talk to me and say, what's going on? Like, I'm really shocked that you've crashed your car. Like, why? How did you get to this point? And I don't even remember what I said to him. And he said, okay, well, what we're going to have to do from here is put you in the ward. I stayed there for maybe 2 weeks. That felt like a prison. It felt like a true prison. But I was doing everything they asked me. I was having talks with a psychiatrist. I was taking my medication. And then after 2 weeks, I believe, they were like, all right, Kitty, do you feel well enough to go home? And I lied. I was still scheming in my mind of what I'm going to do once I get out of here. I was just so ashamed of myself because I thought, I've ended up in the ward. This is embarrassing. Well, the only way out of it is to take my life. You know, the thoughts just didn't stop. So I said, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm all good. And my sister took me out. I ended up going to stay with her, but everyone in the house was aware that, okay, this is the next level now. So they were all just keeping eyes on me and making sure I was all right. Wow, just telling this story is draining me. Ooh. Okay, I just remembered something. So I got out of the ward, and I think that part of me was like, okay, you're not okay. What's going to make you happy? What did you do before you went to the ward? Before all of this ever happened, you were working out, you were taking care of yourself. I got back into the gym. I was so skinny because I wasn't eating properly. You know, the body was shutting down. I ticked all the boxes at the ward that I was doing everything that I could to appear like I was normal. Truth was, I wasn't. And so went back home with my sister, and time went on, and my sister was like, can you please just not do anything? I'm going to get my flatmate to keep an eye on you because we're all worried about you, and I want to go out and just have a night to myself. And I said, yeah, I won't do anything. And I'm sure I meant it. And then when she left, just more attacks of, we'll figure out a way to end this. We've got to stop because you're not, yeah. And it was funny because, it's not funny, but these really strong images of me being in a grave were being formed in my mind, and people being at my funeral, just all these really strong images. And I was like, oh, that's the vision that I have for myself, is I'm going to be in a grave and I'm going to die young, and people are going to know that I died young. Wow. My sister goes on her date. The flatmate's checking up on me. I'm going to sleep, but I'm also feeling annoyed she's checking up on me, so I can't make any plans. And she goes to have a shower, and I see this as my chance to escape. Find the laptop cord again, and I tie it around my neck. And I'm sorry that this is triggering. I really am. But I'm going into detail because I want you to see how strong it really got, and how I came out of it, because it's a crazy story. And to even think that that part of my life happened, and I thought while I was in it, there's no way out of this, for it to turn around. My eyes are closed, and I'm starting to hear my heartbeat slow down, and it's slowing down, and it's going slower and slower. And I stop myself. Something about not hearing a heartbeat was so scary to me. And it was that realization of, this is all you've ever known, is your heartbeat, and to not know it. And that scared me. And so I stopped. And then I had about a few boxes of antidepressants given to me by the doctor from that first time in the ward. And it was a big lump sum of them. I grabbed all of those, and I grabbed some sleeping tablets and just a whole bunch of other things. And I just had this idea, oh, you take pills and your system will crash and you'll die. And so I grabbed the pills, I jumped out the window while the flatmate was having a shower, jumped over the fence and ran through this field that led to a big bush area. I get into the little ditch and I'm hidden, no one can see me, popping all of the pills. But before I do, I say, I can't take this anymore, God. And I just start swallowing. I swallow. And then for some reason, I ran all the way back home. As I was running past this field, this massive rain cloud passes over me as I'm running. And then I jump back in the window, and apparently I took a shower. I got into my pajamas and I went to sleep. My sister comes back in the room. She wakes me up, and I don't really know what's going on, but she has a phone. She's like, Fire Tanya would like to speak to you. And I remember just being like, okay. And Fire Tanya is a Māori wahine, a lady who is a healer for Māori going through really distressing times. And she's just a beautiful lady who wants to help people. And so she had her on the phone, and I woke up from this nap seeing my sister, then seeing Fire Tanya on the phone. I said, hello, how's it going? And I seem all like happy dada, and then I start vomiting. My sister pulls the phone away. She comes back in and she's like, what's going on? And I said, I just took all of those pills. We're going to call the ambulance. And anyway, I get up and I start to really sort of understand what's happening. And the ambulance can't come. So who comes? The police come, because it's just also, apparently it's a really busy night. When the police come inside the house, I just remember being like so freaked out. I was just like, and then my sister's like, no, it's okay. You're all right. Don't worry. We end up traveling to the hospital together. My period had just started. I had bled through my pants. I was a mess, guys. If that is one way to just enter a hospital, blood on your pants, my eyes, I didn't realize how I was literally like this. It was like someone was going like this and pulling my head back, and my eyes were like, my pupils were dilated. I walked through A&E and all these people are looking at me, and I went to go sit down, and just that journey of being in the hospital while it's so busy and you get first priority to go through those doors, and you're sitting there, and it's like I could sense I was a nuisance. I could sense that the nurses and that all had other things to do, and they did. They really truly had other things to do. And so I could hear on a phone call that a nurse was talking and saying she took 90 antidepressants, and the police officers are sitting there and they're busy on their phones, just like, I get seen by a nurse, and before the police officers leave, they're like, take care, kitty. Like, there was just no tone of life in their bodies for what I was going through. I didn't sense any sort of empathy, and that stuck with me. And I just remember the nurse even looking at me when she was taking the pump, and just feeling so, like, I could sense like she just wasn't in the mood, or something was just not, I didn't feel welcomed at the hospital. And I could see people were looking at me when I was through this state, and I was just sitting in this chair like a crazy person, literally like a nutter. And then I get taken to the psych ward on a wheelchair, and I'm just rolling through with my head down, feeling so, you don't think it'll happen to you until it does. Anyway, I go through, people are helping my sister put me into bed, but I'm so frail and I don't really know what I'm doing, because I'm so spaced out on all the drugs. And I go to sleep, and I remember waking up the next morning, and I had someone who was sitting outside my door with the door open watching me. And I was just like, what is going on? And I didn't even realize that I'd look like this. Look in the mirror, and I'm just like, what the heck? And I go to breakfast with this lady who's watching me, and I just break down in front of her, and she's like, you're breaking my heart, crying. And I said, what have I done? And I thought that I'd literally messed up my brain. I was like, I've messed my brain up. So I've just literally effed my brain up with all these drugs. I'm never going to be the same. And I was just crying and crying. For someone who was going through the things I was going through, it makes sense on the outside to send someone to a ward like that, but I don't think that was the most appropriate place for someone who was going through those suicidal feelings, because I was around all sorts of people, and I think I needed a lot more intimate care. And so I saw a lot of brokenness in those doors, and people with genuine mental illness problems. And there was another girl who is such a beautiful soul, and she was going through the same thing. It felt like I was in a prison, and I hated it. And I just thought to myself, how did I get here? So I wasn't trusted, and people literally had to sit outside my room, and I had the spotlight being shone on me. Any movement they could hear, they would just be watching me, because I was just so dangerous to be trusted. And this went on for a few weeks, and then it finally got to a point where I was able to just have a bit more freedom. And I tell you guys, there's something so humbling about when people are watching you heal through a mental breakdown. It's so uncomfortable, but it was the way that it was meant to be. It just made me realize you can't heal on your own in isolation. You need to be with other people, going and talking with them. And as time went on, I just remember slowly building my confidence up, but the thoughts were still there. And there was this time in the ward where I still had plans to take my life. I think to myself, how have I gotten here? There's no way I'm ever going to overcome this shame. And I'm being witnessed by people in my downfall again. Here I am again. Shame washed over me. I remember going back to my room and just thinking, what do I do? What do I do from here? All I could think of is I need a canvas. I need some coloring pencils, and I just need to go out. And so someone got it for me, and then the next day I woke up and I felt okay. I felt so inspired. It was strange. It went from being like, what have I done, to we're happy, we're okay, everything's going to be okay. Really, I just felt like I was normal kitty before anything ever happened. And I'm painting and I'm listening to Michael Jackson and I'm singing out loud, and I just start coming to life. And it was just really bizarre to me, because I thought to myself, how did you go from this to this? Like, what happened? I remember looking around and life felt so different for me. I was just like, wow, I'm feeling okay. And I started getting visitors, like one of my uncles came in and he started taking me out to different places. He would take me out for coffees, or like he was teaching me how to drive manual. His wife would come along with him. And there was this one moment where we all sat together, and it was the first time that they came in together as a couple, and they just sat with me and they let me cry. I was just crying my heart out. Tears were rolling and rolling and rolling, and there was snot everywhere, and it was just like I was being held by my uncle, and it was just what I needed. A lot happened in the ward, and long story short, the thoughts were still there. And what had happened was my uncle came and picked me up for another driving lesson, but instead of going for the driving lesson, we instead went to the beach. And we parked outside of this really steep, in view of this really steep maunga, this hill called Paritutu Rock. And I would have these visions of me jumping off the rock to end my life. I remember just opening up to him and saying, I've been thinking of jumping off this rock. And he said, do you know that rock's cursed? And do you know that a lot of Māori people have jumped off that rock? And I just thought, yeah, right. And he's like, do you want to go climb up it? And I said, oh, heck no. I want to jump off it. What are you talking about? And so we go to the beach. Sorry, I'm just getting so tired from telling this story because it is a lot, but I want to get through it. We go to sit down and we're just looking at the sun, and we start singing Māori songs together, and I'm just feeling like a little girl again and feeling so embraced and safe with him. And then I look over to my right at Paritutu Rock and I say, can we go climb up it? And the whole time we're climbing up it, can we just sing this song? And it was a Māori waiata called He Honore. Before we even start climbing, we go to pray at the bottom of it. And we take our shoes off. We start blessing Paritutu Rock. And then we begin our hikoi up it, and we're singing. And as we're singing, the only thing I can focus on is just climb, climb, climb. Don't leave your gaze to look down. Just keep climbing. We keep climbing. We get to the top. The sun is shining on us both. And then we start praying for cleansing around the top of the rock. Something switched from there. The lie, I want to jump off this rock, became, this doesn't scare me anymore. Even as we were going down and I could see the cliffside, I came down that rock a new person. It was the beginning of my freedom from the lies of death. But did it stop there? No, it didn't. I can't remember when, if it's a few days after or even a week later. But I go to take a bath and I fill the bathtub up. I submerge myself with the intention of letting the water just fill my lungs. And I can feel the water filling my lungs as I'm looking up. And I stop myself from letting it go any further. I can smell vomit in my body. And I remember a smile comes over my face. I'm going to just point out that I had a few of those smiles over my attempts. I don't attempt anymore after that. After the Paritutu rock and the drowning, it's like it stopped. Enough was enough. I get out, I get released, and the journey of me finding my feet in the world again begins. I move back to a place that I had stayed at once without getting back into the gym. Start slowly going back to church. I start thrifting again. I start dating again. Gosh. Thank God that he protected me from that and stopped me. And then at the place that I was at, something doesn't feel right living here. So I moved to another place. And I remember when I was at the second place, it felt a lot more me, but I felt like something was missing. And then I started looking for dogs. I was like, I need to get a dog. I didn't find a dog, but anyway, it comes to my 26th birthday. And we're with our mum at a pub. We end up going on our way. And just as we're about to leave, my sister can see there's a cat in the boot. And my mum didn't get me a cat for my birthday, but this cat had jumped into the boot. And my mum just got in the car to come and meet us and didn't even realize how he'd jumped in the car. And I just looked at him and I was like, you're my cat. And I took him home with me that night, and we went and he lived with me and at my new place, and it was just the beginning of a really beautiful awakening. I had my little baby to take care of, and he just gave me life again. And I was at this new place, and I was just doing all these things that I thought were great and taking care of myself. I had gotten a job at a bar, and I'd become the bar manager. I was just in such more of a mentally sound place and doing all the things that I thought I did well. And I could see, looking back, I had put a bit of weight on and I was just looking a lot more healthier, but I was using food to help me get by and my vibrator to get me by. There's no shame about this story because we're all human and we all struggle with things, whether it's food, sex, I don't know. That's just a part of the fallen world. I end up going to this night service at this church, and I go with my uncle and his wife, and it's a pastor who's come in and he's doing a tour of New Zealand. They're talking, and then there's this offer for people to come down to the altar to surrender their life, to ask to give their life to God. And it's just this big audience of people I don't know. I felt called to go down and just get on my knees. And we all got on our knees, a few of us, and we lift our hands up. I can just feel myself being so vulnerable. And this man comes up to me. He says, hey, have you died? Have you almost died a few times? And I open my eyes and he says, I can see a drowning, a car crash. I couldn't believe what he was saying to me. But I just remember the spirit of death tried to take you out because it's afraid of you. Because you're actually very powerful. And I was so confused when he said that, but I just thought to myself, how the heck do you know that? I've never met you in my life. How do you know this? And he said, God is the Alpha and the Omega. He knows how many hairs are on your head. The job and the partner are coming. And God knows how much my career and finding a beautiful man is to me. Those are the things that I think about daily. And so he talked about something that God talked about the very things that he saw me doing that I didn't even think he was aware of. And he talked about the very things that are dear to my heart. And that just woke me up. I was like, okay, no, that's it. And from there, I've been learning about who he is. But what another life-changing thing for me was, I remember just lying in bed going, I want to watch something, I don't know what to watch. And I got this idea to turn The Passion of Christ on. And I tell you, that movie made me cry like a little baby. After that movie, there was just this wave that washed over me of peace and surrender. And I think, looking back, it was the Holy Spirit. And it was just being reminded of, this is the way for you, Kitty, and this is what you've been missing out on. This is who God really is, the man that died for you on the cross. And I just remember watching that movie thinking, how could people be so cruel to someone, to God? How could they have been so cruel to a perfect man who was here to spread love and remind people of who they really are? That was just the beginning of my return back to being, to following Christ. And so I really started taking it seriously, going to church, and every part of me didn't want to go, but I still went back. And eventually I ended up moving back up to Auckland and doing the course. And I did it with my sister, the Māori course that I mentioned earlier, but she didn't enjoy it, so she left. And I stayed there for the whole year, as challenging as it was. There was just so many times where I didn't want to stay at this course because it was just beyond my own capabilities. I felt it was so advanced, and I didn't feel I was getting the support educationally that I needed for a beginner. And it was just like going from 0 to 1,000. I managed to stay there, but towards the end of my course, this is when I started leaning into God, and I said, God, I don't want to be at this course, but I need you to give me peace and help me get through it. And just from there, it just kept building and building. I was going back to a church that I had once or twice been to in Auckland, and I was just coming and going, and many times that pastors would invite me, and I would just think to myself, oh, this is a cult. They just want me and just leave me alone. Now I can sit here and say that I go every weekend.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
My mind and my purpose has changed from do Kitty's will to what is God's will for me. It just made me realize it doesn't have to get to the worst place in your life for you to follow God. But for me, I guess it did. Just knowing that God was with me through that journey of hell, of me trying to take my life out. And I look back at it and I see that the enemy really wanted to take me out, and he couldn't, because I was divinely protected. Because every time I tried to attempt to take my life, something would stop me. I forgot to mention there was a time where there was another instance where I tried to take my life, and I stood there. You couldn't take it back, what I was about to do. I remember just staring into space, just going, what is going on? Everything got so quiet around me. I just felt this need to get down from the step and walk out. Every time I tried to do it, I couldn't fully go through with, because I was protected. God protected me from the spirit of death, from the enemy. I literally went through hell. I thought that the only way out was death, and that is just the biggest lie. And what I'm learning so much with God is He is the light. He brings light to darkness. This world wants to keep you under this deep dark blanket of despair, and it wants you to rely on its thinking and its resources. And what God is He's the creator of the world, and He created us to be holy and in His image. And He's just shown me how broken I've been because I wasn't nurtured along the way, but I forgot who He was. And yeah, there were many times where I thought to myself, where were you, God, in the pain? But He was there the whole time. That pastor literally spoke and said the things that no one could have known except God. Death is not the only way out. God loves you so much. You have a calling on your life, and it's not to be in a grave from an early age or from whatever age you are. And I'm seeing so much brokenness in this world. It's so heartbreaking to think that people truly believe this lie. And there are so many reasons why a person gets to that point in their life. For me, I think the reason that I got to that point in life was, at the core of it, I didn't feel enough. At the core of it, it is why people take their lives, because they don't think that they're enough. And God, over my life, I can just see little moments where He's reminded me I'm enough. I'm okay. There's so much learning in what Christ has for us, and what the world has done is perverted who God really truly is. People think He's just this white man with a beard in the sky. He's not. He's far beyond our own comprehension. He knows how many hairs are on your head. He created the heavens. And while there are a lot of things that I don't understand why things are happening, I do believe that God has a plan, and He is righteous and almighty above all understanding. So much that is happening as a result of me surrendering my life to God. I am healing this deep wound of abandonment, of loneliness, and that has come from I think before I was even born. It was feeling my mum's own self-worth, maybe even feeling my grandma's own self-worth. I sit here today and I say that enough is enough. I am worthy because of Christ. I am worthy because He died for my sins. And what is so incredible about how God is changing my life is my relationship with Mum. Me and my mum, biggest enemies. Why? Because I was fighting my mum's demons and not my mum. Something incredible happened the other week was my sister and I brought our mum back home to Christ. I used to think my mum was going to die soon. I used to think she's not going to live long because she does not take care of herself. She's not mentally well and physically well. We prayed over her and something has lifted. And I just can't help but feel like, I don't want to sound like the hero complex here, but my purpose is here to bring my mum back. And it's to bring people back and remind them of who they really are. Because guys, if we're all out here broken, then we're all out here believing a really silly lie that we're not worthy enough. And that's just bollocks. God loves us. We are from His Spirit. And I say that confidently because I see how He's working in my life. He's changing my mind so much. I would have these really just nasty, intrusive thoughts. I just feel like the enemy's attack on me was from such a young age. Me thinking I wasn't enough, doubting, being fearful all the time, anxious. What's the word? Dissociating. When I started following Christ, those things subsided. You know, there are moments where I get these little thoughts, but I don't anymore. 2 weeks ago, I just finished a cleansing stream where you go to, I went to my church and you're praying with all these people over all areas of your life, and you're speaking out loud and declaring God's word over you, over things that you've struggled with, whether it's fornicating, your financial mindset, how you think about yourself, soul ties, what you've come into agreement with unknowingly and knowingly, came out feeling so at peace. I think that we come into this world pure, beautiful creatures, and then we grow up and we start believing all of these lies. And that is what got me in that mental ward. I believed the lie of the enemy, that I wasn't enough, and I was seeking everything but the source of God, seeking validation from guys, from friends, from beauty, from my vibrator. I'm sorry, I sound crazy, but guys, these are things that people really struggle with. We're living in a world where people are so broken, and then they don't have a relationship with God. Men and women are struggling. They're not living in their divine purpose, being connected to God. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, but I'm on my way to a holier life, and that's keeping me on track, on the narrow path. Because like the scripture says, straight is the gate and narrow is the way, and few be there that find it. When you follow in Christ, he's going to lead you to cut away a lot of stuff that wasn't serving you. It's just sad that people don't want to know God when God really just wants to offer them such an amazing life. And I'm being called into a really quiet season, and also a season of just like freedom and letting it out and communicating and creating. So it's just funny that I've sat here for the past 2 hours doing this video, and I just want this to be the start of a really amazing community. I want people to feel safe here, and I am not afraid to talk about the ugly, the yuckness, because that's the world we live in, and it doesn't have to be the world we live in. My God is a God of light and strength, and he can handle anything. There is nothing to be ashamed of. There is freedom in the name of Christ. And it's like, if you don't have a relationship with God, he's going to be everything you think he's going to be until he reveals himself to you. And that's what God did to me. He revealed himself in a funny way. Finally feel like I'm in a point in my life where it's just me and God. God has his hand on me, and even when I have moments of I don't trust, he's helping me. He's really resetting things in me that were never meant to be there. It's like I'm becoming a new creation. I feel like a little child again. I know some people who haven't been happy since they were a child, and it's like what is this life been to them? Is suffering. I invite you to just come and hang out and be a part of the conversation. You're welcome here. And I'm going to say I love you guys, because I do, and I just can't wait for the next episode. So thank you for spending your time with me, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye.